I think only some of my closest friends know this about me, but I love starter sets for role-playing games. I get all nostalgic when reading through an introduction to role-playing games meant for completely new players. I think the reason for it is that I actually learned how to DM through one of these boxes. I'd been a player and occasional DM for several years, but the Star Wars introductory adventure game from West End Games is what really taught me how to run a good campaign in any role-playing game. I still use the tricks and tips that I read about there today. So even as an experienced DM, I was thrilled 2 years ago when some of my friends got me the starter set for 5th edition D&D, and I would like to pass on my impressions of this module onto you. Whether you're looking to get started in D&D, looking for a gift for a friend, or hoping to complete your collection, there are many reasons why this set could be something you're thinking about buying, and I hope to you leave my video today with a firm grasp of whether or not this is a product for you. So let's start with what you get. What's inside the box? Well, first off, you get a complete set of dice. Now these blue beauties are actually some of my favorite dice right now. When I first got the box, I used these dice for my Elven Druid Elveneth, in one of the rare times I got to enjoy D&D as a player. Since then, they have been promoted to my DM dice pool. A set of dice like these here in Sweden would cost you about half of what the full price for the box set is, so just there you're getting quite good worth for your money. I've got two small criticisms about the dice provided, however. First, there isn't a percentile die. Not everyone feels the need for it, but I always enjoy having a percentile die as a part of my dice sets, and I've yet to find one that matches these to buy separately. The second is that there's just one d20, and this is something that I felt was missing from the official Tomb of Annihilation dice set as well. Considering that advantage and disadvantage is a core mechanic in 5th edition D&D and entails rolling 2 d20s, I think it's a damn shame that a single d20 was provided. You can of course just roll your d20 twice, but having a second one would have felt more appropriate. Next we have the 32-page rulebook. Now, this little book actually contains all the rules you would need to run a simple game of D&D. And what I find so great with these rules is that they aren't dumbed down or simplified versions of the rules like you would find in many starter sets for RPGs. These rules are identical to the ones you would find in the player's handbook. Meaning that, unlike some RPGs, you won't have to relearn a more complicated version of the game once you advance beyond the starter set. Yes, the player's handbook and Dungeon Master's guides have more extensive rules for situations not covered by the starter set, but nothing you learn here will be useless later. Not only do you get rules for combat, but you also a rather extensive list of spells and conditions and prices for equipment. Pretty much everything a beginning group of D&D players will need is provided within. I'm actually a little impressed with how they managed to fit it all in just in 32 pages. The other book that provided is a rather nice little adventure that will take players from level 1 all the way up to level 5. Unlike many other starter sets that I've read, the adventure provided here won't be over in just a few hours. This is a full-blown mini-campaign that will keep any beginner group of D&D players entertained for several sessions. Now there will be some spoilers here as I talk about the adventure and give my thoughts on it, so if for some reason you're watching this and do not want to know anything about the adventure, if you're a player looking to buy this box as a gift to your DM, for example, then know that the adventure is quite good, and pause the video and jump to the time posted below to avoid spoilers. For those of you remaining, let's talk about the Lost Mines of Phandelver. The adventure is set in Forgotten Realms campaign setting, but no previous knowledge of the world is required. The places relevant to the adventure are described, and although it's easy to tie the adventure into the larger setting, it is in no way required. I'm not going to do a complete walkthrough of the adventure here. Instead, I thought I would just point out some of the parts of it that I especially enjoyed or that I found to be problematic. The adventure starts off pretty much in medias res, with the players already having accepted an assignment to transport a wagon. I think this is a rather good idea, as it doesn't waste too much time before the action starts, and I think it can be helpful for newer players to have a fairly straightforward path to follow at the beginning of their first adventure. As the adventure continues, it also gets more complicated, allowing the players more and more freedom to explore by themselves and to choose where to go next, and how to handle the situations laid out in front of them. I think the first small dungeon of the adventure is potentially a little bit on the deadlier side for a group of beginners, especially if it's a small group. There are a lot of goblins in a cave, and if the players are unlucky, they might be facing down wolves and a bugbear as well. Level 1 adventurers are squishy things, so even experienced players could fail if they're not careful at the start. The town of Phandalin offers a nice base of operations for adventure, and I can definitely see a group growing to be its protectors and have many more adventures around the town once the starter set campaign is over. The town offers several quests and some NPCs to interact with, and it's really the player's first taste of having complete freedom of their journey. I really like Chapter 3 of the adventure, that is focused on allowing players to visit several places around the land and to explore a bit. Probably my favorite bit is that they managed to throw in a green dragon into the area. As a starter set to D&D, it really feels like having a dragon in the adventure at some point was a must. The mystery of the villain, known as the Black Spider, who is pulling the strings behind the curtain, is rather enjoyable. The main villain of the story is foreshadowed nicely before the final showdown. And I would like to mention that I rather enjoyed the final dungeon of the set. It lives up to anticipation built up during the adventure and offers some interesting monsters and environments. It is dangerous, but not impossible. Overall, a nice ending to the story. There's one thing missing at the end that I would have liked though, and there are some story hooks and ideas of how to continue the story, something to make new players excited towards writing their own adventures. Overall, the adventure offers everything one could want from an introduction to D&D, giving players a chance to interact with NPCs and roleplay, opportunities to explore and travel freely, and of course dungeons to clear out. The book has appendixes on both magical items and all the monsters encountered, and with that information a clever DM could come up with several more adventures. At the end of the adventure, players will find themselves at level 5, and there are several adventure books that can easily serve as a continuation of a group story. Storm King's Thunder, for example, even offers direct advice on how to play that campaign as a follow-up to the starter set. The last thing provided in the box are 5 pre-made characters and a blank character sheet that you can photocopy. The characters are classical archetypical D&D characters, 2 human fighters, an elf wizard, a halfling rogue, and a dwarven cleric. Each character comes not only with full backgrounds and rules for how to play them at level 1, but predetermined level ups, so as the campaign progresses, they can grow in power. Now, what's missing from a box? Well, there are a few things I would like to see. The main thing I wish the box included would be poster maps. Seeing as how the starter set is in a box format, I think it's a missed opportunity not to include something like that. Maps of the dungeons and adventure locations scaled to allow the use of miniatures or tokens for those who have them would have been ideal, but smaller reference maps would have been enough. But those maps aren't really the essential ones I'm missing, but more something that would have been a nice bonus. The maps I would have really wanted to see is a poster map of the area of the Sword Coast where the adventure takes place, and a map of the town of Phandalin. Maps of those are of course provided in the adventure book for the DM, but they contain DM information, and they aren't something you would like to show to your players. I think it would have really helped new players visualize where they are a lot by adding maps of those 2 areas. I have to assume that the reason something like that wasn't included was to keep the costs down, and granted, that seems to have worked. So my final thoughts. The starter set is a good introduction for new players into D&D. I would say at its price, it would even be a good buy for an established DM in need of a new dice set and a low-level adventure to run. It is very easy to build on what is provided in the starter set, either by purchasing the core books or by downloading the basic rules for D&D for free from the Wizards of the Coast webpage. All the characters provided in the starter set have classes that are fully covered in the basic rules, allowing players to continue playing them all the way up to level 20. It's not the best starter set I've ever read, but it's definitely above the average, and I can imagine that many D&D players will be nostalgic for the lost mines of Phandelver in the future. As always, if you enjoyed my video, then leave a like down below, it really helps a lot. And if you want to see more of my content in the future, then you can press that subscribe button. But don't forget to press the bell icon as well, so you will receive notifications each time I upload a new video. If you would like to support my channel, then share this video with your friends, and you can also check out my DM's Guild products. Or follow me on Twitter or Tumblr, links to those in the description below. Until next time, Dungeon Delvers.